Back in Germany, I gave up half of my money to taxes, but back then I didn't even care because it was so normal. Now I'm living here in Cyprus and I'm paying 12.5% corporate tax and 2.65% on my capital gains. And this is such a blessing side effect of living here in beautiful Cyprus, but it leaves me wondering, would it also be possible to pay 0% tax here in Cyprus? Let's find out together. Hey everybody, I'm Rico and in this video I'm going to talk about, is it possible to pay no taxes at all here in Cyprus? Let's say my business generates 1 million in profit and I'm very happy about that just because it's 1 million, but I'm also happy because I only have to pay 125,000 to the Cyprus government in corporate tax. Now I want this money in my personal bank account to buy some fancy things, to buy a car, to pay for my rent, to pay for groceries, etc. Now I also have to pay the 2.65% on the profits, meaning it should be more than 20k. But the NHS contribution is actually kept at 180,000, meaning I only have to pay 4,770 euros for my capital gains, which is not a tax, but it is the contribution to the national health system in Cyprus. So, here in Cyprus, I would get for 1 million in profit about 870,000 into my private pocket. Of course, only if I'm the only shareholder of the company, in my case I am, but let's say we have some business partners and the shares of the company are distributed between each other, so the dividend also needs to be paid out relatively to the distributions of the shares of the company. But how is it possible that I could buy a house with the money on tax that I'm saving here in Cyprus compared to Germany, and that I could even add an apartment on top of the house when I would get down to 0% taxes and not pay the 12.5 but actually 0? So now we are coming to the actual interesting question, is it possible to pay 0% taxes in Cyprus, Rico? The short answer is yes, kinda. My non-professional legal answer is yes, and the answer to the question, will this be possible forever, is no. Probably not and most likely not. So let's make sense out of all of that and dive a little bit deeper. As an entrepreneur, you are both your employee and the employer at the same time because you own the company and you work for the company. And every company needs to pay a lot of taxes. But the beautiful thing is that you can decide where you locate your business. And as there are many different countries with many different tax schemes, you can decide to go to a country with another tax scheme than the country you're living in. And the reason for that is obviously because each government can decide on their own how and for how much they tax their citizens as well as the businesses that are in the country. And in Cyprus, well, they decided to go with a relatively low corporate tax and with a 0% capital gains tax, which are the two most interesting taxes for an entrepreneur owning his or her own company. On the other hand, the income tax here in Cyprus is actually very high, meaning your salary that you get every month is taxed at a pretty high rate. So as an entrepreneur, it makes sense to pay out a low salary and to pay out as much dividends as possible because this is tax-free. But very important to differentiate between the money that is owned by your company and the money that you're owning as a natural person, because after the 12.5% corporate tax, you're actually not owning your money as a natural person, so you yourself. In order to do that, you need to pay the additional 2.65% NHS contribution, and then you own it personally. This, by the way, applies to any kind of capital gains. In Germany, for example, the capital gains tax is currently at 25%, so this tax scheme doesn't make sense there. But here in Cyprus, for example, you also earn tax-free dividends from stocks that you own or from other investments that you have. Just capital gains in general are tax-free. In some countries, even cryptocurrencies are seen as capital gains. And if this would be the case here in Cyprus, even crypto gains would be tax-free. However, this is not the case at the moment. Crypto is still unregulated here in Cyprus. Now coming back to the corporate tax and answering the question if 0% tax is actually possible here in Cyprus. And as I said earlier, technically yes, because you could also run a company, an offshore company in another country from Cyprus where there is no corporate tax. Examples for that are Dubai, Hong Kong, some US LLCs and even some European company forms. And if you earn money with that company. Then there is 0% corporate tax on your offshore company, and you still own the company. That means you could also pay out the dividends out of that company, and you're effectively only paying 2.65%, not the 12.5% that we discussed earlier in detail. And now you're actually living tax-free in Cyprus with 0% taxes, because the NHS contribution is not even a tax, it's just a contribution as explained earlier. So effectively, this is like the secret sauce to live tax-free in countries like Cyprus. However, very important to mention is that I'm not a professional tax advisor, I'm not an accountant. This is just something that I talked with a lot of people about. I know people that do that, and I definitely still recommend you to talk to an expert. Check out my video description for that. I have a very good agency recommendation for you for Cyprus for that. And in general, if you like those kinds of videos, definitely make sure to check out my other videos and subscribe to the channel. I love to have a smart community and to grow it, of course. Now let's also discuss if I actually recommend this. And well, it depends, because it's definitely not going to work forever. As I said, there were previous tax schemes that also worked in the past, and then the people that did that had some side effects out of it. So let's talk about the risks of this tax scheme. One possible risk for that is a global corporate taxation, which is actually already discussed in the US, and Janet Yellen, so the Secretary of the Treasury of America, is actually trying to implement a global corporate taxation at 15%, which would also apply for offshore companies, meaning the 0% corporate tax is not possible anymore. Second risk is the CFC rules, meaning controlled foreign companies, and this is regulation trying to regulate exactly what we just discussed and having offshore companies. And then also, what if you end up moving again to another country and they are asking you where is all the money from? Of course, maybe they are not asking you that, but the risk is still there. And the last question would be if you even need that, because if you're coming from a high tax country like Germany, for example, and you're paying 12.5% corporate taxes now, just feel good. It's a fair, good and awesome taxation model. And yeah, if you earn 10 millions a year, I can understand that you want to save another million. But if you're just earning 100k a year, don't even bother about that, in my opinion. It also depends on the business type, how long you want to stay, what you're actually doing, and what you want to do after your business ends, for example. I know many people talking online and offline about offshore companies and how amazing and safe they are, and this is only true until it's not anymore. And with this video I actually want to say, yes, it theoretically works, and it might work for some time, as the Panama Papers or Seychelles once worked, but please proceed with caution, because as a professional business you want to have a solid structure, and more people that you can imagine burned themselves with offshore companies and are even in jail now. Because when you think about it, every business needs to be registered, and when you have this kind of structure or setup, of course the government knows what you're doing. They are not like, oh, he's having a business in Dubai, living in Cyprus, and yeah, all is good. They may not talk to you now, but you're living for a long period of time, and when you then move to another country and they see this, what happens there? You know what I mean? As a business, you just want to be bulletproof. You want to have a good gut feeling. You want to sleep well. You don't want to think about, oh, what could happen here and there. It's like being a little kid. You did something stupid and then you're just afraid of what your parents are going to do to you. This is not how I want to run a business. I want to focus on growing as fast as possible, hiring people, making as much revenue as possible, and playing to win instead of trying not to lose, if you know what I mean. And yes, you could argue that tech giants like Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft and other corporations use double Irish sandwich or whatever it's called and super complex structures to optimize their taxes, but you're not a tech giant, at least I'm not, and I don't have that influence and power, and I cannot do whatever I want. And if you're the same, then probably the best option as an individual with some employees and a company, a good company, a big company, the best possible scenario is maybe to set up your business in Cyprus, live here in Cyprus with a sea, with palm trees, with 300 sunny days a year, and you meet the requirements that the Cyprus government sets to you, and you're paying the taxes here in Cyprus, the local taxes. So no one can ever say in the future that you did something wrong because you applied to the regulations of a European country and you did what was told, and everything is good. But before you pack your stuff now and fly to Cyprus tomorrow, don't rush, because there are some things that you need to be aware of, such as exit tax, which is possible, and also to have a clear plan. That's very important. For example, if you would live in Germany and you have an offshore company without letting anyone know, and you're just trying to hide some money in a weird country, I don't know if you can sleep that well. You should definitely talk to an expert, and even if you just want to come to Cyprus, check out the video description. I actually recommend an expert there that will help you with your individual situation, as this is one of the most important things. So now we're coming to the final conclusion. Do you really need to pay 0% taxes? If yes, do a bigger research about countries with 0% corporate tax, do a research about countries with 0% capital gains tax, and do your business. But if you want to live in a beautiful country where you have a reasonable tax scheme, where you pay less than half in taxes than you would in Germany, for example, then look for a country that you like and you want to live there. Like me, I'm living in Cyprus for 3 years. Most importantly, your plan needs to be bulletproof, so that nothing will happen in the future, nothing will backfire. And this is what I'm also discussing in other videos. We talked about a lot of things. If you have any questions, definitely make sure to leave a comment. I will be happy to answer them, and I will see you in the next video.